Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining IBM Tech Exchange webinar. Before we start, I'd like to go over some housekeeping items. At the bottom of your screen, you should see a Q&A box where you can start submitting your questions for our presenter today. Later today, you will receive a link to the on-demand recording, a link to the slide deck, and a link to IBM's community page where you can connect directly with our experts. So without further ado, I will pass it over to Kaushal.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Kaushal Maru, and I'm one of the product managers at IBM SevOne. Prior to being here, I've been a customer of SevOne myself, and I love the product and the team so much, I decided to join. So I was at BT Global, which is an MSP, and you'll hear a bit more about my experience there as well. As a bit of from an inside view. We're really excited to have you here to dive into SD-WAN and with SevOne. Whether you're an existing customer or just want to learn more about us, you're in the right place. Over the next hour, we'll walk through a presentation followed by a demo. We'll have a short poll, and my colleagues, Deva and Rupert, are here to answer any questions that you might have. With that, let's jump right in. Right, so to begin with, I want to talk about something that we've learned from our customers as well as from analysts, things we've heard, which is common happening in all our lives and in the industry, and the challenges that you face in terms of monitoring and in terms of, how does it affect your business? So things that have changed, external factors like, shift to the hybrid cloud. So working remote also means that everyone's, the apps are in the hybrid cloud or in the SaaS, so they're closer to where you are. Also means that, the networks aren't the cozy networks that we knew, or LAN or the WANs in the office, but now you've got to rely on things like SD-WAN, which provides, connectivity over the internet. The network's becoming a lot more dynamic, and with that comes challenges as to, application delivery. How do you know how was your application delivered? Which path did it take? How do you ensure the user experience for that? With that also comes fragmented visibility, different domains and different orchestrators or different tools that you have. So although we're going to talk about SD-WAN. Hello?
Before you go ahead, I'd just like to say, you're sharing your screen, right?
I think I am.
Deva, we don't need that. The slides are available to be viewed.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. Go ahead, Kaushal.
So I'm on slide 2. Is that what everyone's seeing? The presenter? Sorry, the participants?
Yes.
Okay, super. So I'm just changing on the webinar, and cool, fantastic. And so, you've got the fragmented visibility. So what we do, although the webinar is on SD-WAN, what I will also cover is that we don't do just SD-WAN, right? So we do all the other parts of the network, and that way you have a single visibility, the classic single pane of the glass and whatnot. And last but not the least, labor shortages. I think the pool of network operators is shrinking, the experience is getting smaller. So how can we make it easier for anyone in your network operations team to get the best out of the tool? So with that, I'm going to talk a little bit about what our focus has been in the last 2 years. So we kind of talk about 2 pillars that we focused on. And again, it's also built from things that the analysts have said. So and that comes from customers' surveys. So things like limited scope, that they can't monitor everything that they want to monitor. It's difficult to get data from different sources. Traditionally we've had SNMP where we could get the data from all the parts of the network, and networks were a little simple. With SD-WAN, it was like, well, now we have an API that we need to get the data from, so you've got a bit of dev to happen and what have you. So one of the focus items was collect new data types, especially if you as customers now have a hybrid network, you introduce different types of vendors into the play, then you've got to bring them all together. And that's why someone like SevOne, which is vendor agnostic, helps. Plus, in terms of the data that we collect, we want to give more context to it. So to the point of how do we help any newcomers join to give a bit more context of what the device is, what is its, what is its role, what is the device type, what is the model, things like these, which is enrichment. We want to collect it, we want to surface it, and that you can basically build reports on it. You can slice and dice as you will. So just next slide. So given all the challenges we've heard, why SevOne for SD-WAN? So one of the things, and again, as I was at BT as an MSP, we've heard the same argument from our customers as well. As to with SD-WAN you get the orchestrators that come as free. So why do you want to invest in something like SevOne? What's the need? Because you get everything for free. True. However, there are certain aspects that, challenges that come with it. So things like scale of the network. So it's okay on an orchestrator where you've got like a page with all the sites, and say you've got 5 sites, you can click through it, you can look at the data, and that's okay. But production networks are different, right? So you go from 5 to 100, 5 to 500, and just going through each one of them, looking for performance, that's not something that's scalable. So one of the things which comes handy with SevOne is we collect everything. There's we can top end, we could surface the worst performing or most used type of data. Any use case that you have, so any metric that you have, we can, you can top in on it and see basically what are the things that you care about. Performance alerting is one of the things that the orchestrators lack. So they do, use most of them basically just have up and down. What do you do when you've got a performance degradation? So, with all the fiber cuts happening across the world, undersea cables, spuriously, you need something that tells you that something has degraded, not just completely stopped working. And as we all know, not that with resiliency built in, it's never a full blackout. There's some performance impact, and how do you see that? And that's where that's one of the things. Plus, just while I'm on the subject, I'll talk about the baselines that we do and the baseline base alerts. So what is normal and what is abnormal for the hour of the day of the week is something that we tell, and that is key. And we talked about the, how you've got multiple views or the network split across multiple tools, just to be able to bring all of them together where you can see not just your, SD-WAN, but also the firewalls behind it or the LAN, just to see everything on a single view. Last but not the least, I'll talk about like the orchestrators have limited storage. So it's from 24 hours, 48 hours or 7 days. It's kind of that's the storage that they have. So you can't run reports, you can't run capacity reports, so you can't look at the monthly data. So that's kind of why. So one of the challenge that we saw with all the SD-WANs, and our experience was colored with, we started off with Cisco SD-WAN. We've had Versa and Nuage and what have you. What we did see that, vendors did talk about the APIs as the preferred mechanism to get the data out. However, there were challenges with that because it wasn't meant for real-time monitoring systems. So the data is about delayed. 10 minutes is the minimum I've seen, and maximum is 50 minutes, and also the data is batched. So it kind of puts pressure on us because now you've got to get the data, and every 50 minutes is a large chunk of data. The other aspect was SNMP, right? So, well, to start off with, not every vendor had it. Plus, it lacked coverage, so you didn't get all the metrics that you wanted. So one of the things that you don't have to worry about, and you talked about, well, it's difficult to collect data. Well, we do it for you. We kind of look at the metrics that you care about, that are important, and we just bring them in from the mechanism that's the best kind of sustainable, right? It's in real time, so you can alert on them. There is no penalties. You can't, if the data comes in late, the alerting can't happen. So you can't have real-time alerts because the data is anyway late. So that's one of the key aspects to think about. So talk about the Goldilocks principle. It's either, either or, everything is either too hot or too cold. So we've kind of found the just right solution. What do? Right, we get the inventory, we connect to the orchestrator, we get the inventory. So we get all the edges using the API. The next thing we do is we get the metrics. And again, metrics depends on, the quality and what have you. We'll rely on SNMP as much as possible because it's within 5 minutes. We can even go down to a minute, and our fast polar can go even below that. But we also use API. So where the data doesn't exist, so things that you'll see in VeloCloud we've introduced in the last few releases, we bring in data from API. Metadata. Love it. We bring the devices in, we decorate it, we get in a lot of rich information from the orchestrators. And I think one of the brilliant things about orchestrators is that they have a lot of data. Things like the lat long, a lot of things in the pre-SNMP world, you'd have to put it in the sys location. This is something you basically on the UI put in, and we basically get it in a format. You can then use it on the maps that we have on DI. So it's basically not just getting the data, but being able to use it. And the application view. So we do consume IPFix and Flow. Every vendor has its own format. VeloCloud particularly challenging in terms of, they had a by flow. So we've kind of cracked that nut. And last but not the least, we do the URL monitoring for the orchestrator. And it's important to point out that a lot of times, so orchestrators, in terms of, say, vManage, it's important that the connectivity to the vManage within the SD-WAN network is there. So we do have our own URL monitoring plugin. So whenever you onboard or you integrate the orchestrator, we will automatically create an HTTP kind of synthetic test to, if you like, to the orchestrator. So we'll do things like, how long does it take to connect? How long does it? So basically, you can, again, with the same baselines, you can see over a period of time if that has degraded, and that's one of the other data points to consider. With that, I'm going to jump into Fortinet. So I'll talk about Fortinet and VeloCloud today. It was one of the 2 new vendors that we've introduced. It's a journey from 6.4 until 7.1, which was the last release we've had. So Fortinet, it started off and as a security company focused on, security, and there was a FortiGate Edge, which became the SD-WAN Edge. So they introduced added the functionality to it. Similarly, not just the capability improved, but also they added the SNMP capability to it. So you basically, if you've had, FortiGate edges, they enhance them. So one of the brilliant things we've seen with Fortinet is we not only just get performance stats that are important for SD-WAN, and one of the key things that we see is the performance SLA tests that Fortinet does to applications. So you can create synthetic tests from the edge to a Google or to Office 365 or what have you. But we also collect the security stats. So we're seeing the demo, and so things like WAN optimization, IPS IDS stats is something that we collect. And I will say again, you probably hear me repeat this, but things like performance SLA tests, they are always dependent on a from and a to, and it's very hard to know what a good performance metric or response time, jitter or latency is, because you don't know what it is from different locations. And this is where the baselines and the alerts come handy. So I do have, I'm going to pause for a second. I'm going to ask Aditi if there is a automation in here, because I have got in there automation, but this is basically what you're seeing now is the plugin view. And I wanted to talk about the onboarding experience. So if you've heard from us in the past with our, the way we started off with Cisco SD-WAN, you needed an external collector, additional infrastructure. One of the things we were mindful while we looked at expanding the coverage was that we didn't want to do that. If you've got an existing SevOne cluster, you can essentially just create this, integration, if you like. And if you build this integration, you basically get the full SD-WAN support. You don't need an external collector for it, be it SNMP or be it API collection. So you add the device. Like you add any other device, it's basically we call it an integration device. It's the Forti manager. The difference is you not only put the SNMP credentials for the edges that we need to connect to, but we also collect the API credentials to the Forti manager in this case. We cycle through all the edges. We prioritize the interfaces or the ports which have SNMP access to them. We cycle through all the IP addresses we found to find the routable IP address. So basically, we want to be able to manage all the edges via SNMP. So you don't have to do any of the hard work of seeding the devices or what have you with the routable IP addresses. We will find it. We will add them. The next step we do with this is we enrich this. We not only enrich the devices but also the objects, and there is an out-of-the-box content that comes with it. I think there's a little automation might not work with the WebEx, but that's fine. We'll have a look at the report when we are going in the demo. And I'm going to jump into VeloCloud, talk a little bit about it before we move ahead. So VeloCloud, and again, every vendor has its own terminology. Someone calls it tunnels, VeloCloud calls it parts. And they have a different concept called links. Basically, it is an association, they call it the underlay. I think about more of it as an overlay because you associate that to your interface. Of course, you can overload the interface, but some of the things that we do get from the links is things like, what ISP is this link coming from? And we basically get this as metadata. I'll hopefully show you in the demo. And this is another example. We basically not only collect this data from SNMP, but things like advanced health. There are things like tunnel counts or overcapacity drops, or even QoE stats, which we've added in the last release. This is something that we collect from the API. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the flow support. And we talked about challenges that come with dynamic networks and how do you know what path has something taken. This is a view. There's another view which talks about the application to the link. So what link did it flow out of? But also with the 3x3 calls on VeloCloud shows you things like what was the priority associated with the application, or what was the traffic type, and how was it treated by VeloCloud. So just looking at this, if you see one of your applications, business critical applications, things you can infer is, well, someone forgot to put the priority or to it, and hence it's not getting correctly categorized, and there is it's not meeting SLAs. But also things like I can see in this view, SD-WAN management traffic, most of it is classified as transactional, and most of it is going direct to internet. So it's just out here, and then some of the traffic, like the SNMP, is going. Part of it is going via the gateway, and the other part is going direct to the internet. So that's kind of key to understand how is the application flowing, and then you can basically look at the metrics to understand what those circuits were behaving at that point in time. Okay, so this is we do have an existing support for Cisco, Versa, VeloCloud, and Fortinet as of today. We are planning for Prisma SD-WAN and Aruba Silver Peak. And at this point, I'm going to ask that we can do a quick poll to understand how many of these do you have in your network? Do you have plans to introduce? Yeah, could we bring the poll up? give it 45 seconds. Okay. So I'm going to send the results. Let's have a look at the results. Most of you on Cisco SD-WAN, Fortinet's the highest. Good to know. Cool. Right, I'm gonna jump into the demo. Bear with me a second while I work. Video bridge. Right. Let me know if you can see my screen, Deva.
Kaushal, we see
Yeah.
the screen.
Yeah, you could make it wider.
Super.
Yeah, that's good.
Right, grand. Okay. So we've got some out-of-the-box content that I talked about, but before jumping there, I want to talk about our latest device manager and device summary that we've launched. So up in the left corner, like you've seen if you've used NMS, that same capability is now in DI as well. So you can see a quick view of your devices. This will not only have the SD-WAN devices, like in mine lab, we've only got connected to the SD-WAN lab in this case, but you should be able to see all the devices in the network. And once you're here, the device summary that we all loved in NMS is in DI. So things like metadata, what are the things that I care about. I don't know what I want from this device while I'm looking at reports. So I want to see everything. I want to see all the interfaces. I want to see all the, give me a quick view. And this is amazing at that. So, CPU, memory, all the objects basically are there. In case where there's quite a few objects, they are collapsed, but you can, expand them and basically look at them. So I'm going to go into the reports now. So let's start with VeloCloud. That's where we were last, and then we'll move to Fortinet. So this the first tab. This is pre-canned reports. It's not something that. So you can always modify this. It's a starter for 10 to get you started. You've done the hard work of getting the connectivity and getting it onboarded. Now you want to just look at the data, right? You want to see what are we collecting. So this gives you a starter for 10, essentially. You can look at the inventory and a sample of the metadata that we have. So things like, is it activated, or if it's in a test, it's probably not activated. HA configuration at a specific site, the licensed bandwidth, again, important software version, things like this, which is important, while you're fighting a fire. You don't want to switch back and forth to the orchestrator and CLIs and what have you to look at things. If we collect it, you can surface all the information. It also shows the error states that we have. This is the alerts based on SevOne alerting. I love ICMP. It gives you a very good quick stat about things like response times, and if they go out of the window, something's changed in the network. It's a good quick measure. So here's the alerts page where you can basically look at all the alerts that are there. At the moment, I've got some discards going on the interfaces. Next tab to device health. So standard, CPU, memory, peer states. Not only, I think one of the issues we've heard is, when the peer is down, you want to know about the peer, whether it is down or not. And in this case, you can see in Paris. Yes.
Cool, sure. Could we just zoom in a little bit to help some of us with smaller screens see it? If you
can you see it?
We can definitely see it. We just need you to zoom a little bit. So use the Command plus or use Zoom in Chrome to zoom in a little bit for us.
Better?
Quite possibly it takes... Yeah, that's better, yeah.
Okay. Right. Fantastic. Thanks, Rupert. Right. So another thing to point out, you can even drag things over here so you know when something's gone over. You can quickly have a look. All of these here are SNMP in terms of device health or WAN links. I will go through the API collected stats as well. Right, so I did talk about the metadata on the objects. You can see this is on the link, the ISP. Unfortunately, in our test lab, all the ISPs are IBM Corp, but you'll have a lot more better data in the production network where you can see, which device, what ISP, what link is supported by which ISP. So when you see something wrong, you know who to go and talk to. So from a link perspective, we collect not only the availability, but also things like jitter, latency, and packet loss. Very important to look at, look at the history and the baseline. These are the things where you basically want to know about what the normal jitter is from this site, and the way VeloCloud calculate this jitter, latency, and packet loss is they do a test to the closest geographical gateway. But we collect it, we baseline it, and we report it, and you can alert on it as well. Parts, we talked about this as being the tunnels. In this case, you can see where the tunnel is. This is going to VeloCloud gateway. Unfortunately, in the lab we only have the gateway tunnels in here, so you can basically see what the amount of traffic that's going to it. Also the packet loss, jitter, and latency. There are additional stats on the VeloCloud in terms of parts by the I want to say I think it's the by traffic class that they provide, which you can report on as well. Right, let's go the latest ones that we've added via API. So the VeloCloud has a couple of mechanisms to look at the traffic in terms of to work around things like packet loss. They have a DMPO and FEC mechanism. So what they also report on, what the experience for voice, video, and transactional traffic was before and after. So if they did take any action, if VeloCloud did take any action in terms of applied DMPO or FEC, they also have an after score. This is of importance because you want to see whether the investment that you've made in VeloCloud, is that resulting in some better user experience. So we do collect QA scores after and before. Another point I want to make is on the orchestrator, you can see it for the last X hours or days, but to be able to look at a top end when you've got multiple sites. So if you're an MSP, you're looking at multiple customers. You want to look at the worst performing. So it's helpful to look at this. So this is the top end view where you can see for the past 4 weeks. Another thing I want to mention here is we collect all the data for 365 days in raw. All the reports that we do, they are run on the fly, so we can basically just change the time span, and then you can go back in time and look at for that time period, what was the experience. Here's the advanced statistics. This is the top tunnel count, so the number of tunnels per sites. And there was an overcapacity drop. So this is the overcapacity drops towards the gateway. And I know we've got an issue going on at the moment at our Boston link, which we're investigating. But, and flow. So we've looked at the flow on the slide, so I don't want to delve here, but essentially, this is the VeloCloud flow. I'm conscious of time. I am going to have to rush through Fortinet. I'll probably just focus on, so we've ensured that what we I've gone into device summary. Bear with me a second. I need to go into the dashboard. Yeah, similar as VeloCloud. So I won't go over everything. I will go on to the tunnel. Okay. I talked about the performance SLA. This is one of the things that Fortinet does, so you can see any performance SLAs that are configured on the edge. And this is a synthetic test. So essentially you can look at, from that site, what was Google search like? Is it even available? And I know there is a test going on here, which we've basically purposely set it to a daft location, which is why you can see that it's at the moment at 0% as a availability. But we also collect, jitter, packet loss, latency. And this is where the baseline comes in. So at this moment, this is looking at the past 2 hours, but this is the baseline that we've learned about this performance SLA test that we've experienced. And this is by its hour of the day, day of the week. So if I go back to past 4 weeks, then I can basically even, bring in more data, show me more. I want to see what this curve looks like for Monday to Friday and Saturday to Sunday. And I know in the past, this was 100 milliseconds, and there is the latency has increased. So again, this is something that you want to look at, and this is not something you can set a static threshold for. And this is where the baselines and the alerts based on baselines are very handy. There's not much data in the lab because we haven't got any, because it's a very well-contained environment. But just to give a flavor of the security stats, in terms of IPS IDS, there's like intrusions that were block detected. We collect them, or even things like WAN optimization stats, because Fortinet has a WAN optimizer capability on the FortiGate edges. So I'm gonna switch back gears to the slides. Right. So kind of a reiteration essentially, but on the left you can see, be whatever type of the network or device you have, we can collect it if you've got SNMP, if you've got API, and I will say this: we are also working with probably some of you with looking at streaming telemetry. So it doesn't stop here. It doesn't stop at APIs. It doesn't, if there is a better source, we will bring it in. And if it does add value where you want to look at high granular data, yes, this is something. So we not only cover SD-WAN, but if you've got an MPLS WAN network or a Wi-Fi, campus branch, Cisco ACI, VMware, yep. Once we collect them on the platform, we do baseline all the metrics. There is, we talk about the alerting. It's based on advanced statistics, so it's not just plain pure static thresholds, and allows you to be proactive. So we've also got, we can take, if the data can be taken out, if you've got integrations to other systems, we can export that data using Kafka, but also, just from working with customers, we know that there's multiple different personas that, because the platform allows them to use. So it's not just network operations, but also, security operations. If the security stats are available on SevOne, you don't need yet another platform. We know compliance management is another big part in terms of looking at, the data or a longer period of time, because we keep them, compliance managers, capacity managers. And I know from my previous work experience that we also had network designers look at it, because they wanted to run things like, well, I've applied a new QoS policy. I want to look at the before and the after. So what's the impact of it? Because we can report on the fly. You basically can build dashboards, but you can build situational dashboards, and then you can have a look at it. Okay. Speed at scale, a bit about the platform, a bit about the clustering technology. So we, if you've got a cluster of one appliance or two appliances and you want to grow the network and the network's growing, you want to add more capability. Now you've got Fortinet, now you've got VeloCloud, SevOne is supporting it. You want to, increase your capacity. It's as easy as just clustering another peer, and you've increased your capacity. You don't have to think, you don't have to scale different components with us, and it's, we horizontally scale essentially. But it doesn't mean, it also means that we still keep our promise at performance. So, speed at scale is our mantra. So, you don't have to, the performance doesn't have to degrade. You can still report as you, even if you scale your cluster. Out of the box intelligent alerting. We did see this in the demo, but this is a really good example and reminder, like, where you can see the dark blue line is the current metric, and you've got the dotted line, which basically is the baseline. And then the shaded part is the kind of plus minus deviation. So if you're building an alert policy, this is kind of helpful in terms of knowing whether a certain spike would have been caught or will be caught in the future when you're, when you're visualizing it this way. So it's quite helpful, not in just visualizing it, but also you can use it in your alerts. We did see the out-of-the-box reports, as and when we increase our coverage, we're going to keep in mind that we'll keep churning out more out-of-the-box insight. And so just recap before I finish. So what we've looked at is we've looked at automated baselines. We've talked about speed at scale, how we can horizontally scale quite easily. We've touched base on some use cases and personas, capacity planning being one of them. We see a lot of customers use our projections, so it's helpful to do things like, what is the projected trend? What will it look like? Will it breach a threshold in the next 60, 90, 180 days? Data that we collect is highly granular. We maintain it for 365 days. We do not throw away. Other vendors do average them out. After a certain period, you will see vendors averaging them after 60 days. We don't do that. We keep them. The averages and the aggregations are run on the raw data, but the data is still there. So if you do so ever want to look at the actual data, it's all there. We've looked at how we support next-gen networks. So broad support of the leading SD-WAN vendors or software-defined data center networks or Wi-Fi or cloud. So we do have, you've probably heard Deva on his webinars with Azure and AWS. We bring in the data from the cloud providers as well. So you have a single place to visualize all the data, and the modern integration. So things like, where you want to connect to your CMDBs of the world, or you want to ticket into a ServiceNow. So we've got webhooks that you can integrate systems with. You can integrate into Slack or Teams, for example. And last but not the least, if you haven't followed, EMA did recognize us as a value leader for 2024. Yay. So, and this is, one of the customer sentiment out there is like they do find, our machine learning capability quite helpful to stay on top of, alerts in terms of deviation. And with that, come to a close. I'm really thankful that you took out time to come and be with us, hear us. Let's give back some time in your diaries.